I was already preparing myself to leave because I joined the military the summer before I started the 12th grade. The summer, I was enjoying my little summer vacation, but I had already gotten permission from my mother to sign the dotted line. She signed the dotted line for me. I could not sign the dotted line. I was still 17 years old. So the recruiter came to my mother's house, and my mother signed the paperwork. So before I started the 12th grade, my thinking had already transitioned. All I needed to do was to complete the 12th grade. The only thing besides death that could prevent me from going into the military was not completing the 12th grade. So that was my responsibility to make sure that I passed the 12th grade. Well, fortunate enough, I only had to take 3 classes in the 12th grade. 3 classes. I only had a half a day. So that was not too difficult to get done. But for me, seeing that learning came hard for me, I knew that was going to be a challenge. Even with having a half a day of class, that anything to do with book learning, it was going to be a challenge. Well, I got through those classes. I got through English. The main class that worried me the most was English. So I got through it, and I got my diploma, and I walked out into the real world. I walked out into the real world 11 days later. And those first 24, 48 hours, 72 hours, it really shakes you to the core. I mean, it really shakes you to the core. There's no way to dress it up and make it sound nice and pretty. It's just no way of trying to dress it up and make it sound nice and pretty. All I can think of is that it was a shocker. It was something that I had to adjust to really fast. I really had to make a major adjustment really fast. I had to make that decision really fast because I was going to either have to hang in there and take it day by day, or I was going to have to go back home. And I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to go back home and have to deal with my mother's discipline. My mother's discipline. So I'm standing there in the military, getting in process. Because, when you first get in, they got to in process you. They got to give you all these uniforms and all these shots, and you got to go through all this other stuff. It takes about 2 or 3 days for them to in process you. And so as I'm going by day, I get through the first 24 hours, and then you wake up the next day and you're still breathing, and you just got to pinch yourself. You got to pinch yourself and see if you're still alive. And so I'm thinking to myself, Aquilin, are you cut out for this? Aquilin, are you cut out for this environment? Do you want to go back home? Do you want to go back home? Hell no, I don't want to go back home. I know that. Hell no, I'm not going back home. That I was able to answer really quick. So it didn't leave me too many more options but stay where I was at and see if I could cut it day by day. So that's where I'm at, folks. When it comes down to the nitty-gritty of pointing that finger back at yourself, that's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. But before I would want to blame my mother or my brothers and sisters or blame my community or blame anyone else, I'm going to have to point that finger back at myself. If I cannot do that, then I cannot fit my mouth to point my finger at anyone else. If I do not have the backbone to point that finger back at myself, then I'm not worth anything. I'm just not worth anything. anything if I don't have the backbone to do that. So, as I said earlier, it's a growing process. It's a growing process. It's a development process. It's a journey. It's a growing process. It's a development process. It's a journey. But when I look back at my life and I think about the different conversations that around with my peers and everything, and how you listen to each other's perspectives and you listen to each other's lived experience, and I'm sitting there listening to folks talk about how their mother wasn't there and their father wasn't there, and this happened and that happened. This person in their family died and that person in their family died, and so on and so on. I lost my brother at 12 years old. 12 years old. I'm only 12 years old, and next to my oldest brother dies. His life is snuffed out because of his roommate. Just snuffed out because of his roommate and him had an argument. I'm told this at 12 years old. I'm supposed to be able to process this at 12 years old. At 12 years old, I'm trying to remember the last time that I laid eyes on my brother. It's hard for me to even form an image of him because I was so young when he died. I had to live with that. I've had to live with that. Just like many of us, we have had to live with different life experiences. Each of us have had to live with different life experiences, ups and downs, sadness and happy moments, all in between. Each of us have had a lived experience, some good and some bad. Some good and some bad. There's no getting around it. There's no getting around it. Not one of us escapes that. Not one human being that's birthed into the world have the ability to avoid the good and the bad. The good and the bad. The good and the bad is all part of a life experience. And so, after listening to DJ L. Beast, I knew I had to do a live broadcast today. I haven't done a live broadcast in months, and many months, because I've been going through and I'm still going through a very financial hardship. But I'm in there fighting tooth and nail. I'm in there fighting tooth and nail day by day. And what I'm drawing on is the foundation that my mother gave me. My mother is in her grave, resting in peace. But I am still drawing from her foundation. It is getting me through the next day and the next day and the next day. And she is 6 foot under. But I'm still benefiting from that foundation that she gave me. Did she get everything right? Did my mother get everything right? Did my mother get everything right? Did my mother get everything right? Hell no. But in my eyes, my mother got everything right. My mother is and was, well, the way I say it is, my mother was and is my world. I put was first because she was my world as I was growing up and developing into an adult. And she is my world even though she's not still here with me in the physical. She still is my world. I can't deny that. That's what I lean on to get through the next day and the next day, and the foundation that she helped put in place for me. And then I built on top of it. She built the first level of the foundation. My mother and my brothers and sisters and my community and everyone that crossed my path put helped put the foundation in place, but it started with my mother. It started with her. So once I got into that military and I started learning about myself, really learning about myself, because in the military, you can't, most persons that go into the military, you're not going to be able to run away from yourself. It's a requirement. It's downright a requirement in the military that you look in that mirror at that person looking back at you. Boy, it's not, when that day comes when you say, wow, I got to really look at myself. I really got to really look at my good and bad. I got to really look at that person that's looking back at me in the mirror. Oh my Lord. And you don't get to that understanding overnight. It's a gradual process. It's a gradual growing process. You grow and you develop and you learn about yourself, the good and the bad. You learn about your little hang-ups about your character. And you just start to learn about your character. And you keep on learning about your character. And you keep on learning. And then you just have to make a decision of yourself that only you can make it with the blessings of the good Lord. What type of person do you want to be? Do you want to be a lazy person? Do you want to be a hard worker? Do you want to be an honest person? Do you want to be a dishonest person? Do you want to make different choices with your life? You're going to have to face all those questions. You're going to have to face all those questions. Of course, some folks say, well, your mother and father supposed to get through that decision-making process. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. They are hopefully there to guide you through those decisions along the way. That mother and father, if you're blessed and fortunate enough to have a mother and father there as you are growing up, then that's a blessing. That's a blessing. I learned, it took me all the way into 2014, just before my mother died, to really learn that I read this book called The Purpose-Driven Life. Some of you may know of that book. It's titled The Purpose-Driven Life. What am I here for? I think that's the way the title goes. I read it. It's been a while. I've read it a couple times. I played the audio on Clubhouse and Fanbase. I think I did not play it over here, but I think I played it on Clubhouse. I may not have played it on Fanbase, but I played the whole audio book. I read the book 2 times at least, and it was titled The Purpose-Driven Life Book. What am I here for? Once I read that book, I started going back in my memory over my life, thinking about different memories. And when I read that book, it told me that God, the Heavenly Father, specially pick out your mother and father, especially for you. That God, the Heavenly Father, specially select your mother and father. And as I kept reading that part of the book over and over and over and over, it made me start thinking about my mother. Of course, I'm going to think about her because my mother was a single parent. She raised her 7 kids by herself. She had a proposal to get married, but she turned it down. She sat us down and told us about it. She gathered us all in the kitchen and she sat us down and she explained to us that she had to make a difficult decision not to get married and bring a male person into the household. And the way she had explained it to us that we had grown up most of our life only having one person tell us what to do. One person tell us what to do, and that was her. So by the time my mother received this engagement offer, most of us was quite old. At the time, as a young child, you don't quite fully understand it. But as I grew older and went out into the world, I thought back to that conversation, and I started to be able to understand it a little bit better. That she was able to make that decision for me and my brothers and sisters. I can't tell you that I fully understand how she came to that decision, but as I got older, I was able to make a little bit more sense of it than I did when I can't remember how old I was when she told me. I just cannot seem to remember that. I'm going to say that I was definitely over 12 years old, because that was when my brother died. So I was definitely over 12 years old. So it had to happen somewhere between 13 and 18 years old. But anyway, when I read that Purpose-Driven Life book, it told me that God especially picked out my mother and father. And being that I was a child that grew up without a father, that part in the book really made me pause. I'm thinking to myself, Aquilin, you have never met your father. How do you feel about that, Aquilin? Are you angry? Do you blame your mother? Do you blame this person or that person? Aquilin, can you answer that question? Aquilin, can you answer the question, are you angry because you never met your father? Well, as it turned out, my older sister was angry at our mother because she did not know her father. Me being the baby girl, I had to pick up the phone after looking at my mother's face one day and seeing the pain on her face that her daughter had stopped talking to her for 2 years, all because she did not know her father. Here I am, I'm growing up in the same household, and I'm asking myself, I'm not feeling that way. We both in the military, we grown adults now. We grown adults, and we're having to try to work through this. And so I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my mother's face, and I could see the pain in her face. I could just see the pain like it was yesterday. I could see the pain on her face, and I could not. That really upset me, that my mother was in that kind of pain. Now, you may think, why couldn't I try to relate to what my sister was going through? I could not relate to what my sister was going through, because I didn't feel that way. I didn't have the anger that she had, that she did not know her father. I don't know. I was able to process it differently, and I didn't carry any anger. So anyway, turns out I went back home to my apartment, and at the time I wasn't staying in an apartment. I was staying in a house, kind of like a townhouse, and it was a pleasant place to live in. I have to say I really enjoyed living there. So I worked up the courage to get on the phone and call my sister and have that heart-to-heart talk with her. And I really didn't know what should I say to her? How do I start this conversation off with my older sister? I'm the youngest. She's not going to want to listen to her baby sister. But I had to say what I felt in my heart. And so the words just flowed out. I just dialed the phone number and let the words just flow out, and they flowed out. And shortly later, she reached out to our mother. I don't know what I said that got through to her. Hopefully something that I said got through to her. Something I said helped me to try to work through my understanding of how I felt. But I can honestly say, I've never felt angry at my mother by not knowing my father. I don't know whether it's just by God's will that He shielded me from feeling that type of anger. I just know I've never felt it. But then I think about that book, The Purpose-Driven Life, and I said to myself, God has picked out my mother and father specially for me, and it gave me a lot of comfort. It gave me a lot of comfort, even with not knowing who my father was. I had the comfort of knowing that my Heavenly Father had specially picked out my mother and father before I took my first breath. Now, it's no denying it. As I grew up and grew into an adult, I had to admit the truth that my life and how I turned out could have been different if I could have had a father figure there. Because a child needs both parents' input to be a whole person. That's just my evaluation. Every person may not feel that way. But as I grew up, as I grew older and older and older, I started to be able to evaluate it could have made a difference. But then again, it could have had a negative impact. So I don't wrestle with it. I don't go back and forth and with any turmoil. I don't have any turmoil about it. I really don't. I'm at peace with it. Again, I think that's from a blessing from the good Lord. I know it's from the blessing of the good Lord. I should probably be carrying a lot of different emotions, but I just don't have them. I just got really blessed and lucky to have the special mother that I was blessed with. I was really lucky and blessed to have the special mother that my Heavenly Father picked out for me. And maybe someday, if it's meant to be, I will find out who that father is. But if it's not meant to be, then I can't beat myself up. And I'm certainly not going to blame my mother. I'm very, very protective of my mother. It's always been that way. I think me and my sisters and brothers, we all have that inside of us. We would go to battle against each other if one of us was doing something to hurt our mother. I mean, we would literally fight each other if one of us did something to hurt our mother. We didn't play around when it came to mom. We did not play around. We would literally beat each other up. And we had quite a few fights because of that. But we got through it. But anyway, that book, The Purpose-Driven Life, really, really, really gave me a wealth of understanding. It gave me a wealth of understanding. And I thank my best friend of 30 years that constantly kept on pressuring me. She kept on pressuring me to read that book. I finally decided to read it with her. I didn't want to. I didn't really want to read the darn book. But she kept on pressuring me. And finally, in 2014, I sat down and started reading the book with her. We both had the book. And she, she wanted to read the book with someone else at the same time so we could talk about it. But anyway, that's why I'm so angry today with DJ L Beats. And for the past 2 years, I've been on these social media apps. Up until then, I didn't really engage in a lot of conversations that talked about this topic of blaming generations before you. I guess it all depends on your environment and your lived experience and those around you that help to shape you and shape your perspective and your mindset. A lot of variables come to play. A lot of variables come into play. And I guess again, I don't blame the generations before me. Not one day have I woken up. Not one day in my life in 62 years have I woke up and blamed the generation before me. It never crossed my mind in my thoughts. I just never had it. I believe that it's good to look back at the generation before you and try to learn from whatever they went through, the good and the bad, the good and the bad, the good and the bad. Try to learn from those that came before you. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. You got to really be committed to. You have to really be committed to doing it. You got to really want to do it. You have to really desire it, have a passion for it, and be able to have respect. Because each and every one of us are sacrificing every day that we are here. Some of us more than others. Some of us more than others are making sacrifice daily. And like I started off telling you, at 7 years old, I had to discover that my environment was not safe. So I guess maybe that really what prevented me from even trying to form a thought of blaming the generation before me. For me to have to be at 7 years old and knowing that my environment was not safe, I can't even imagine what the environment was like for those that came before me. I can't even begin to fathom what their environment was like. I was 7 years old, and I had to discover that my environment was not safe. I can't even try to imagine those that came before me, what their day-to-day life environment was like. I didn't have any question about blaming them. It never crossed my mind. It never once crossed my mind to even look back and even let the thought cross my mind that they were the blame. They were not the blame. How can I even fit my thoughts to even think that they were to blame? See, it all boils down for me, I can say, for your development, your environment is all a lot comes into play. A lot comes into play to your development and your environment. Who knows how much trauma and scars were passed down to your mother and father who conceived you that may have had an impact on their development. It's no way of knowing some of this information. It's no way of knowing what that person's lived experience was before they conceived you and to the world. It's no way of knowing what their personal, individual lived experience was like, or their environment that shaped them. It's no way of knowing that unless you have a crystal ball, I guess. Unless you get the information from heaven, from God. It's no way of knowing that. You're just playing a guessing game. I mean, I could have made an attempt to question my mother and ask her to tell me who my father was. I could have did that. I had the ability to ask that question. I made a personal choice not to ask that question because I was more concerned about the pain that my mother would feel from me asking that question. Because I had already grown up and bear witness to the sacrifice that my mother made for me and my sisters and brothers. I watched it day by day. I watched it day by day of the sacrifice that she made. Do that excuse her for everything, every decision that she has made in life? No, that's not for me to say. That's left up to God. That's God's decision. Long as my mother made sure that she did her absolute best above and beyond to make sure that her children were safe and were fed and were clothed and had a roof over their head, I can't ask for more than that. And she checked every one of those boxes. She checked every one of those boxes every day. She made sure her children were safe. Even though we grew up in the projects, and that was a hard job. That was a hard job for a single mother to try to raise 7 kids in the projects. But I spent the first 9 years of my life growing up in the projects. I can't even imagine what that was like for my mother to have to try to raise 7 kids and try to make sure that they are safe. I can't even begin to imagine what it's like. I do remember her constantly saying, as we were growing up, she wanted to get us out the projects. She constantly sat us down and talked to us about that. She said over and over and over, I am going to work 2 and 3 jobs to get my kids out of the projects. And she did it in 71. She accomplished that goal. I can remember those conversations like they were yesterday. She said, I'm going to get off of welfare and I'm going to get my 7 kids out of the projects, because she knew we were not in a safe environment. She knew that better than we did. She clearly knew that her 7 kids were not in a safe environment. That was her number 1 priority. That was her number 1 priority. I can remember it like it was yesterday. But I still cannot even imagine what she went through. I didn't walk in her shoes. I was just a child. I can't even begin to imagine what she went through. So here we are. As adults, it's very easy to point the finger at someone else. It's very hard to point the finger back at yourself. It's very, very, very easy to point the finger at someone else. It's very, very hard to point the finger at yourself. But on top of all of that, the environment has been the main enemy of the brown-skinned person, of Negroes and Negro descendants, and all brown-skinned person. If you happen to be birthed into the world with brown skin, whether you were birthed in America or somewhere in the world, you were going to be mistreated. That environment was already in place before most of us took our first breath. That evil, sick environment was already developed before most of us took our first breath. It just started being developed before we came into the world. We didn't have any control over it. We didn't have 1 ounce of control of that environment that was being developed before we were born. We just happened to be blessed to be born into the world. And depending on where you were born, depending on your environment, depending on where you were born and where you grew up at, of that environment that you were birthed into. And as you grew up in that environment, it was shaping you every single day. Every single day of your life, your environment was shaping you, along with the family and family structure around you. So you got two separate structures that you are growing up in. You're growing up in your family structure and your environment structure. They may go against each other at any given time. And so it's a lot to process when it comes to trying to understand what is hindering you from having a productive life. It's a lot to evaluate. And you got to really be grounded to be able to really peel back those layers. You have got to be hopefully as grounded as humanly possible, because you're going to have to peel back some layers if you're going to get to the best understanding that you can get. And it's not going to be an easy journey. It's not going to be a quick answer. But you're going to, if you have the patience and the discipline, hopefully you can come to that understanding. Hopefully, if you have the patience and the discipline, you can come to that understanding. You can take that journey and you can grow and you can develop and you can take that journey to learn and understand about yourself and about the lived experience that you have endured. It's not going to be no quick answer. No one has all the answers. No one have all the answers but the Heavenly Father. That's just my evaluation. It may not be that evaluation for you. That is my personal evaluation. That this lived experience is a continuous journey. It's a continuous journey. And I just have to be willing to go on that journey and to grow and develop every single day. I have to be willing to grow and develop every single day to be the best human being that I can be. The happy human being that I want to be, and be strong enough to face the ups and downs. I want to be happy. We all want to be happy. But I also have to be strong enough to face the ups and downs, the good and the bad. I have to be strong enough to face that. Otherwise, I cannot have a productive life. It's not going to just be one way. It's not going to just be good and no bad. It's not going to be just bad and no good. So I got to be strong enough to face those ups and downs day by day. And some days are going to be good days. I'm going to be strong enough to face them. Some days I may be a little bit weaker, and I just have to regroup. And I just have to get back up and keep going forward. But I'm not going to have a perfect journey. I'm not going to have a perfect journey. There are going to be those days where you feel that you have been beat down, or you just want to be lazy that day. You feel like being lazy. And there's going to be those days, hopefully it's going to be more days where you feel like you're going to want to work hard and give 100%. And you're going to be able to accomplish any goals that you set, and you're going to get the results that you want. But it's going to be a journey. Sometimes it's going to be rocky. Sometimes it may be rocky. Sometimes it may be smooth sailing. but it's all a journey. And not one of us have all the answers. And so not to beat yourself, I said, Aquilin, I am not going to beat myself up. I am not going to beat myself up. I'm going to do my absolute best to try to look in that mirror and have that heart-to-heart talk with myself. But I'm not going to beat myself up because I did not get everything right. I'm not going to beat myself up, and I'm not going to reach back and blame this person and that person and that person and this person and that person. I'm going to do my critical evaluation of what went wrong and what went right. Hopefully I have the ability to do that I can make my critical evaluation of what went wrong and what went right, and go from there. I am not going to take time off of my life blaming anyone else. Well, let me correct myself. I have only one person that I can blame with a clear conscience. With a clear conscience, it's America. America is the number one person that I can blame without any hesitation. And I can do that with a clear conscience. America is to blame for all the harm that I have endured in my life, all the trauma and the scars that I have inside of me. For the most part, let me correct myself again. They have a big percent of the scars and trauma that I have inside of me. Now, my personal lived experience have also contributed to scars and trauma that I have inside of me. But America is responsible for the environment and the tactics that have been used purposely to harm me. I can't deny that. I'm not making that up. That's not a fairy tale. That's a reality. That's a reality. That's a lived reality. If you're honest and you are being fair and unbiased, you are able to express your lived experience. If you're doing it honestly and you're not shaping a lying narrative, you're not making up things, you're being frankly honest. Now, you and God only know if you're doing that. A lot of folks don't know how to be honest. They just don't have the ability to be honest. They have to work through that on their own with God. Hopefully with God's help, they can get a better understanding of why they are not able to be honest. But if you're making every effort to be honest with yourself and others, you're going to hopefully be able to get the answers, many of the answers that you're looking for. And you're not going to be taking up a lot of time blaming this person and that person and this person and that person and this person and that person. You're going to be able to unpack it fairly and truthfully. America is the blame for a large percent of the harm that I personally have experienced in my lifetime. That is not made up. That is the fact. That's a fact. That's different than human beings waking up and getting on a social media app and blaming their elders. You see how different that is in day and night? And being completely fair and honest about your evaluation and unbiased as much as humanly possible. We all human beings and we flawed. But if you're making a conscious effort to be truthful, you're not going to get on a public app and blame no elders for whatever blame that you feel that you want to blame them for. Because, I mean, it starts with you in the mirror. And by the time you get done with yourself in the mirror, you ain't going to have much blame to go around. It's just that simple. I just left that part for last. I kind of left that part for last. By the time you get done pointing that finger back at yourself and putting a good percent of that blame on yourself, it ain't going to be much left to go around. I mean, I got America and I got myself. I don't really have much more to go around to anyone else that I could think of. I'm just being frankly honest with you. America is number one, and myself. I don't have a third and a fourth and a fifth. I just don't. I just don't. That's just me. I can't speak for anyone else. I just have one and two. I just have one and two. America number one, myself number two. So I thought it was very, very it set a poor example for those adults to get on a public app and fit their mouth to blame the elders. They're going to have to answer for that. When you are an adult and you mature, everything that we do and say, we're going to answer to it one day. We need to really start thinking about what we do and say, because we're going to have to answer for it someday. And so for those adults that got on the public app today and blamed the baby boomers and the elders and called them a traitor, I think you're going to have to do some soul searching, and you're going to have to answer to it one day. How you choose to have your come to Jesus moment and ask for redemption, that's between you and God, or whoever you believe in or not believe in. That's between you and whoever else that you put any trust or faith into. But you're going to have to answer for it. I personally am going to have to answer for everything that I have ever said or done. I constantly remind myself of that. I constantly remind myself. I say, Aquilin, you are going to have to answer for everything that you have ever said or done every single day that you was on this earth. So it would be advisable for us as adults to remind each other of that. See, I think the bottom line is a lot of folks, they are waking up and realizing that things are really bad right now. Things are really bad. Things are really bad. And things are going to stay bad if you don't know your numbers. Out of all the hours that I was listening to that space, nobody once mentioned that you need to gather your number count. Whether that's your family members, knowing your number count for just your immediate family or your community. But no, folks are too busy not wanting to call each other out because they like this person. They don't like that person. They like this person. They don't like that person. They ain't gonna call out the person they like. If they hear the person that they like say something that needs to be corrected, they're not gonna say anything. They're gonna sit there silently and not say one word because they like that person. They like that person. They rub elbows with that person. That person is their friend. Folks was DJ L Beats were talking about name names. He didn't have a problem naming who he didn't have a problem giving his names, but when other persons gave their names, he had pushback.